Hi, we're here with Heidi Wills, who's running for Seattle City Council, District 6. Would you like to go ahead with your 2-minute introduction?
Thank you, Nicole, and everyone on the 36th District Democrats Executive Board. I'm Heidi Wills, and I have a long tenure in public service, which really came from my background, sitting around tables like this within my family. I'm originally from Butte, Montana, fourth generation to be born there. My daughter, who's now 14, said, "Why did you go back to Montana so I could be claiming the 5th generation?" She was born in December, and the passes would have been tough. But my dad was a miner in Butte, and my grandparents were labor organizers. My grandparents were also suffragettes. My great-grandmother and my great-grandmother were very active in Democratic politics, and I think that it's a big part of the reason why we have so much now is because so many people came before us that fought for their rights that we now enjoy. And I think that it's really incumbent upon us to leave the next generation better than we find it. I'm a mom raising 2 kids in our community, and I care about the city that they're growing up into. We need to ensure that we have adequate affordable housing for everyone in our community. I was raised by a single mom, and I grew up housing insecure. I moved 13 times before I graduated from high school. And I know firsthand how hard that is on families and particularly on children. So I've been running a nonprofit in South Seattle for the last 13 years, working with youth from underserved communities, and I think that we need a youth advocate on the Seattle City Council. I've also been a champion for bus transit. I helped push through the UPass program at the University of Washington. I helped get the first sound transit package on the ballot, and I work at King County, and these will be issues I advocate on the City Council if I'm fortunate enough to be chosen to represent you.
Great, thank you. Now we can start on the questions that are pre-prepared on the piece of paper in front of you. You may flip it over. And Lori, would you like to take question 1?
Sure, thank you for joining us tonight. If elected, what policies will you support to address affordable housing and homeless services?
I think that the city and the county are doing the right thing to combine and coordinate a more effective response to address the root causes of homelessness. And certainly there's as many reasons why someone may find themselves homeless as there are people. And that we need to serve each individual client and meet them where they are. Services are very fragmented now in our community, and it's hard for even case workers to navigate the system. My mom was a counselor working with battered women and survivors of domestic violence. We need to ensure that we have adequate services to serve our most vulnerable community members, particularly in their time of need. And I think that we need more short-term solutions to address homelessness, including 24-hour shelters that are low barrier. I think we also need to have much more adequate mental health in our state. We're 49th out of the 50 states in how we fund mental health, and it's showing on our streets. We also, I think, need to prioritize mental health in our schools. 1 in 3 children now are showing signs of anxiety disorder in our community. We need to ensure that we have counselors in every school to be working with children where they're at. So I think that we need to think about these issues in a systemic way and start when kids are young with providing mental health services. We need more drug treatment on demand, and we need long-term solutions that include permanent supportive housing with wonderful groups in our community like Plymouth Housing Group, which show to be over 94% effective in keeping someone housed, because housing first is found to be the most effective way to help people. With regards to affordable housing, I think there's so much more we can be doing as a community, but I know the time is up. Maybe I'll talk about that in my conclusion.
Katie, would you like to take question 2?
What tools currently available to the City of Seattle would you use to raise more progressive revenue to fund city services? Do you agree to continue to support the already passed city income tax?
Yes, I do agree with the already passed city income tax, and I think we absolutely need more progressive revenue. And I was the only candidate to come out in District 6 in favor of congestion pricing out of the 13 candidates running in the primary. As noted in the Seattle Times when we were responding yes, no to those questions. And the reason why I have a yes and response to congestion pricing is because I do think that in this community particularly, we can ensure that we do that in a way that does not negatively impact low-income communities and people who need to drive in order to maintain their jobs. I think that we can also have it during peak hours, and I think that we can offer full rebates to people who are no income and low income in our communities. That can raise up to $100 million a year, which is significant, that we could then put back into public transportation, such as Orca cards for all. I ran on that issue in 1999 when I first ran for the Seattle City Council as an offshoot of what I helped do at the University of Washington with the UPass, and I think that we should be offering public transportation for free. And if there's any city or even county, if the whole county wants in, that can do that, it's gotta be our community. So I think that that's one of the most important things we can do to address equity in our community, because we know transportation is one of the biggest limitations for people at low income.
Okay, thank you. Jamie?
Do you support the Seattle Green New Deal proposal? If so, which part or parts of the proposal would you work on implementing first? How would you recommend paying for the Green New Deal in a way that the burden does not fall to working families and the poor?
This is the issue that I worked on when I was on the Seattle City Council 20 years ago, and we didn't have a great acronym for it. But now that we have this robust national discussion point, I think that Seattle should absolutely lead the way for the Green New Deal. And I helped write the resolution to ensure that Seattle City Light was net neutral on greenhouse gases. And because we know that we have electricity that is carbon free and that we can electrify our community. So that means we can put electric charging stations for electric vehicles, particularly for Uber and Lyft, throughout the community, so that people who are often low income and living outside Seattle have a way to charge their vehicles for free. We can also utilize Seattle City Light as a way to continue to electrify and weatherize our homes. That then shifts the burden to ratepayers, so I think that we of course have to be careful in how we do that. But when I was on the council, I chaired the Energy Committee, and one of the major initiatives we did was to weatherize homes, particularly low-income homes in our community. That costs about $5,000 per home. But I think that there's ways we can incentivize that. I think with the natural gas conversion, which again, we can be a leader in the nation on that, we need to ensure that we bring communities with us. So I have supported a number of labor groups in our community, and they're concerned about employment for a lot of workers who do work in that industry, and I think we need to ensure that we can transition to a new economy that is going to be more responsible to the planet. This is an issue that matters a lot to me, and it's why I got involved in public service, and I would like to be a champion for it on the council.
Great, thank you. Robert?
How should the city of Seattle spend the proceeds from the Mercer Mega Block deal?
How should we spend it?
Mm-hmm.
I believe, now we're going to talk about affordable housing. I think that one of the most important needs we have in our community is affordable housing, and we need to ensure that everyone in our community has a safe, dry, warm place to stay that's affordable. There's a lot of things we can do with the Housing Trust Fund. $175 million from the state legislature, which is a big boost. which is wonderful that low-income housing providers in our community can utilize those grants. I think that there's a lot we can do here locally as well with these kind of funding streams. I think congestion pricing could be another way that we could come at affordable housing too, because it's all interconnected. And if workers can live close to where they work, it minimizes our global warming footprint. It also improves our air quality, and it improves the amount of time people have to spend with their families rather than being locked in congestion. So because it's all interrelated, I think we can also utilize transportation dollars for affordable housing in our community. With the mandatory housing affordability, MHA, the one way that it could be improved is to integrate housing in those developments, rather than the in lieu of fund that concentrates housing in lower income communities. I've been working in South Seattle for 13 years, as I mentioned, and that's where we see a lot of affordable housing, and I think that we should integrate affordable housing into every community in our city. And I think that integration strengthens communities, and we also have workers of all incomes in all neighborhoods in our community. So I think if we really want to get to the place where we are a more walkable, bikeable community that utilizes cars less, I think we really need to ensure people can live close to where they work.
Okay, thank you. All right, now to open it up to questions. Alice, I believe. These are 1 minute responses.
So would you commit to implementing the bicycle master plan on the original timeline, or perhaps even an accelerated timeline? And can you tell us about your thoughts around that?
So I think with regard to the city's lack of mobility,
Yes.
to use a pun, I think that we really need to have more accountability from the Seattle Department of Transportation on funding directed towards walkable, bikeable communities, including the bicycle master plan. And I think that the fact that our levy dollars are going to be about 50% of what we actually paid for is what we will see is really deeply concerning. And I'm concerned about that in a whole host of ways, not just in the lack of what we'll see with projects that we've been promised, but I think we also need to maintain trust with the electorate and people who we will want to go back to fund other great projects in the future. So I think that we need to ensure that, like the council's doing now with the executive's office, that there are continual watchdogging and questions asked, trying to ensure that we speed up a lot of these projects and fully fund bicycle master.
Lori?
Do you support performance audits for programs that the city puts in place?
I think performance audits like what's happening at King County would be a great thing for the city to adopt. And I worked at King County for 6 years prior to being on the Seattle City Council, and I think that the way that the county does that, ensuring that it's just on a rotation basis rather than waiting for problems to happen, I think will not only prevent problems from happening, but capture a lot of cost savings to the electorate.
Matt?
So in 2003, when he lost re-election, it was because, and it really was a misnomer, a scandal that became known as Trippergate, which was mostly a land use issue that resulted in public outcry. How has that scandal influenced your zoning and land use policy?
I think that what happened with that is that I needed to ask more questions, obviously. That Governor Rossellini, who was a mentor to me, former Democratic governor who was well respected in the state, asked me if I would help solve what he called a small business issue. And I met him at the parking lot at Rick's Strip Club, where it was zoned, a section of the parking lot was zoned residential. It was too small to be utilized for residential. He said that they would put up a large barrier to mitigate sound and nefarious activities happening in that parking lot from the neighbor, and that they would hire a parking attendant. So I thought it was a win-win solution to a problem in that community. I needed to ask more questions. I assumed the best of this mentor who had meant a lot to my campaign. It's a big part of the reason, but remember, this was pre-Google, so I was not able to find or learn information about the Curlicaccio family. I didn't know about their long criminal history. but I've embraced the democracy voucher program so that my campaign is fully funded for the general by the public and not by special interests.
Thanks. Jamie, Leila, and then Summer.
So the King County Opiate Task Force came up with a number of recommendations about how to address our opiate addiction crisis, one of which included having safe consumption sites. And unlike your opponent, I know you publicly come out and said that you wouldn't support having those in your district. And I wondered if you could explain why you oppose that policy in general, why you would oppose bringing it to your district.
Yes, so that's probably one of the few issues that my opponent and I disagree on, because we are very similar on so many issues. And out of the gate, when I first declared my candidacy as a good progressive, I thought, oh, safe consumption sites are harm reduction strategy, but I felt like I needed to look into it further as a candidate. So I went to Vancouver and looked at Insight, took a tour of that facility, and saw the activity happening around there, which I wouldn't want in Ballard. I've talked with our first responders. I have the support of the Firefighters Union, Local 27. They're very much against safe injection sites and safe consumption sites. It's hard to scale it with the severity of the problem. One site would serve between 300 and 500 people. It's estimated that we have about 23,000 people who are suffering from opioid use disorder in King County, so it's not scalable and it's expensive. It's about $1.5 million per site, where we could spend those dollars on treatment on demand, which is definitely underfunded, and we need to be, I think, helping people move toward the place where they're hopefully not going to overdose or kill themselves.
So you mentioned, you were talking about affordable housing and how you wanted to integrate communities and affordable housing throughout the whole entire city and not just one area.
Yes.
So I live in Crown Hill, the new urban village, and it's kind of funny, like my neighbors and I joke like that Crown Hill is like the cheapest part of Ballard, and like, but so once it's been rezoned, we were excited for rezoning because we thought there would be more affordable housing. What we're seeing being built, and we get letters on a daily basis from developers to build multi-million-dollar homes, or like $700,000+ townhomes, and that's not really affordable housing. And so I approached the developer and I was like, hey, if you want to build affordable housing here, we can talk. And he replied back, he's like, well, yeah, I am. I'm building affordable housing in Maple Leaf, but that's not Ballard. So how are you going to make sure that they are building affordable housing in my neighborhood?
Well, one is with the MHA, right? So that's in areas that are urban villages, to ensure that the developers, in exchange for the additional height that they get, that they would have to place that affordable housing on site. That's not currently the law. That's something that should be looked at, I believe, that I would like to look at when I get on the council. I think another way that we can integrate more affordable housing in our community is the exchange of surplus property that's currently owned by the public for use as affordable housing. We just had 2 properties in our district, District 6, go toward that use. They were owned by Seattle City Light. One's in Finney Ridge and another one is in Loyal Heights. And those will become 27 condominiums that all will be affordable housing for people making 80% of AMI and less, which are currently in neighborhoods that I think desperately need them. And I think the last way we can do that is we need to ensure through the state legislature that we extend the multifamily tax exemption credit for existing units and not just current units, because when those current units expire, that will be thousands of people displaced, and I'm really concerned about that.
I wanted to ask you about the mailers, and I know they're an IE, but I want to see what your response is. Because I got 2 mailers from Moms for Seattle with your face on it, with pictures of Ravenna Park, or Powell Park, with Photoshop graffiti and Photoshop tents in it. And it was pretty offensive to me, and your face was on it. So I would like to ask you, what's your response to that? And what's your response to Moms for Seattle in general? And also, what's your response to those mailers that went out to D6 with, another park and Photoshop tents and graffiti.
I think it's truly unfortunate, and I'm glad you raised it. And I think that something that's also deeply concerning is just the Citizens United overall, and what that's done to campaigns across the country and also here locally. And I'm really concerned that people of our community, we want to get back to grassroots politics. That's why we went to districting that passed overwhelming in the city of Seattle, in fact by 64%. I think people, are limiting the amount of money candidates can spend, which is a good thing because it has candidates going out talking to people at the doors. I've raised the most amount of democracy vouchers in my campaign, and third most of all the candidates running citywide. I've knocked on the most doors, which is how come I have so many democracy vouchers. And I'm hearing from people at the doors, what about these mailers, right? And that's where I found out about them. I'm hearing about them from voters who are deeply concerned about it. I'd like to say to IEs, stay out of District 6. I don't need or want your help.
What's your opinion on Moms for Seattle?
I don't know the group of Moms for Seattle, so I have not
Have you
interviewed with
researched
them, or what's that?
Have you researched it since they've sent out mailers with the picture?
I've read an article in Parent Map where one of the members of Mom for Seattle's or Seattle Moms was talking about how they want change on the city council. Maybe they picked me because I'm a mom. I also want change. I think that we do need to prioritize addressing the root causes of homelessness. I don't think it's okay that people sleep in tents in parks and open spaces. I said that very early on in my campaign. I think that it's unhygienic and unsafe for people sleeping in those conditions and for the people sleeping around them. And I think that we need real solutions to address root causes of homelessness. That's probably why they chose me to support, because that's part of why they organized. But I, of course, am not coordinating with them. I don't know them. I did not interview with them. And I hope that all IEs will stay out of District 6, because I think people in our community want to hear directly from candidates and talk directly to candidates. And I'll add that I have just today the Edith Macefield endorsement. The Edith Macefield House has a group of people who care deeply about independence from politics and from political pressures and influences. And I have that endorsement because of my track record of being an independent voice. When I was on the city council, I wouldn't have been able to lead on a whole host of issues that I did, particularly around environmental protection.
Thank you. If you would like to take 30 seconds for a wrap up.
Yes, I guess in my wrap up, I would say that while I was on the council, I was able to lead on getting the largest wind contract of any public utility in the country. It helped start the Green Power Program, which is putting solar panels on public buildings throughout the city, to expand energy assistance so more low-income people could get half off their utility bills. And I also helped lead the effort to get the strongest commercial energy code in the country. And that took a lot of collaboration to get there. And of course, the development community was not on board with that, but after 2 years of meeting with folks, I think that's how you get things done. And that's the kind of leader I would like to be on the council.
Great. Thank you.